You are. You're not going to sit him. You ain't got the balls. I do. I would sit him. Welcome back to the Fantasy Backpack, where we carry people to championships. Now, I'm sitting here thinking of how to do sit start for running backs and wide receivers. I don't even think I'm going to do running backs because usually you start two running backs and what you're going to start what you have. So it's one of those things where, okay, this guy might, whatever, you most likely have to start what you have. If you have a plethora, then you really want to know, but you can look at any old rankings for that. So wide receiver is usually the hardest because you have to make decisions, and you usually have 4 or 5 of those guys just sitting there, and so 3 of them are usually really good. And if you only have to start 2 and you have a third that you can start over one of the other 2, then those are where the decision making really comes into play. So I'm sitting here thinking about it. I'm like, you know what? When I'm doing my teams, there are like only 3 or 4 receivers that I don't touch, no matter what they get started, because they're the only options in their team. The quarterback peppers them a crap load amount, so they might just average out when it comes to PPR or just PPR catches, whatever it is. Those are the 3 or 4 players that I do not touch no matter what. But most of the other star receivers, really, I sometimes sit them. A lot of times I sit them because I see better production coming elsewhere, and if I can get that on my team, then I want to. So these 4 guys that I'm going to give you at wide receiver, you may not have a choice but to start them. Heck, you may not trust me enough not to start them yet. But if we keep doing this, maybe you will take a second look when I keep doing this list. So this is the way I want to do sit start for wide receivers especially. Maybe I'll incorporate the running backs at some other time, or do another one, or even do the quarterbacks like this. I like this way because, like I said, most of the stuff I want to do it more personalized, depending on what you have on your roster. In a 10-team league, it's easy to sit a lot of people because you have more options. 12-team leagues, not so much, but then if you don't make a good decision, there's a good chance you are not going to win. 14-team league, you can basically start anyone. You want it to average out. It doesn't really matter that much. You usually don't have a better choice. So, but these guys, a lot of you are gonna look at me like I'm crazy, but if I had better options over them, I wouldn't start them. So I'm gonna do it in the order of where people are least likely to not start. So the first wide receiver on this list is Antonio Brown. Now, most people I've seen with their rankings, and I do my rankings a week in advance, just so I can see it and see what people think, if they agree or not. Most of the rankings I see have Antonio Brown like 3rd, 4th, around there, like 4th or 5th, maybe the furthest he'll drop. Antonio Brown for me is teeter-tottering on outside my top 10 for the simple fact that I don't like his matchup. Now, in the first game against Cleveland, the last 2 games he's been killing it. So you're looking at me like I'm crazy. He's killing it in the last 2 games. He's averaging 102 yards in the last 2 games. Yeah, against cake matchups, against cake cornerbacks. The first game against Cleveland, he was targeted 16 times, caught 9, had 90 yards and a touchdown. You're saying, oh, that's great. But he was playing, most of the times he was matched up against Denzel Ward, who, it was his first game in the NFL. And Denzel Ward still, since that point, has gone on to be ranked the number 3 cornerback in the NFL. So when Denzel Ward was guarding Antonio Brown had 50 yards. So the 90 yards and the touchdown came when he was not guarded by Denzel Ward. So if I'm Cleveland and this far on in the season and I'm trying to play Pittsburgh, I'm putting Denzel Ward on him more than 50% of the times. So if Denzel Ward is the one guarding him now, I think Denzel Ward might shadow him. If Denzel Ward shadows Antonio Brown, then you're going to have a scenario where he only has like 63, 67 yards. And that's your number 1 guy. He's not getting 16 targets like he did week 1. because Connor and Schuster and even Washington are going to get some of that targets because the other Cleveland cornerbacks are okay, but especially the slot corner is not so okay. So Juju is going to be great. So if I had Antonio Brown, I would sit him. You may not have that option, but I want to, when you envision a number one guy, you envision big numbers, not 7 for 67 yards. And that's what I envision. Now there's a chance it goes nuts, but I like to play the numbers, play the probabilities, and that's what I see for Antonio Brown. Now, like I said, the list is made up of what I think you most likely won't do. You're not going to not start Antonio Brown. And there'll be people, if Antonio Brown goes nuts, comes back and says, well, he went nuts. Absolutely, there's a chance he can. If they move him around away from Denzel Ward, fine. Because Cleveland doesn't shadow, or they haven't shown that they're going to shadow a receiver yet. But if this were my game plan, that's what I would do. I've watched enough football to think, hey, maybe they're smart enough to do it. But who knows? He could go nuts. Now, the next player is Tyreek Hill. Now, Tyreek Hill is a monster. An absolute monster. He can score in many different ways. So the chances of you not starting him is not very high, right? But in the last game against Denver, he had 13 targets, 9 receptions, and only had 54 yards. That's when he was mostly covered by Bradley Roby. Bradley Roby is the worst cornerback in Denver. He is. I think against Denver last year, he only had like 38 yards. Tyreek Hill only had 38 yards, but that was a different Denver team, I know. But I think this game, he's going to be covered by Chris Harris. Chris Harris is the number 4 cornerback in the league. He is just, no one really does anything, much of anything against Chris Harris. And why I think he's going to be covered by Chris Harris, because most of Tyreek Hill's routes are ran out of the slot. Chris Harris mainly plays in the slot. So that 9 for 54 may just be that again. Tyreek Hill, he got 13 targets. I don't see him getting 13 targets this game either. Yeah, he could score on a punt return or whatever, but I'm not guessing or hoping for that if I have something better. Now, I'll suggest 2 players that I would start over these guys that are most likely everybody could have on their team because they aren't named guys that they would have been guys you took later in the draft or picked off a free agency. So Tyreek Hill, I'm not excited to start. The matchup is not in his favor, and he really hasn't done anything against Denver. The next player. Now these players, the next 2 players, you can actually bench because it won't feel as bad to you. But for the people who are just setting their lineups and don't worry, these 2 guys you may want to take out of your lineup. All right. So the next player is Stephon Diggs. Diggs has been struggling the last 2 weeks. He only has 33 yards in both the last 2 games. Now the one in New York, it's one of those where it was so windy. He had a crap load of targets. It's one of those games you can explain away the terribleness. But the one before, he was covered by Patrick Peterson. The problem with Diggs is he is covered by the number 1 cornerbacks. That's why Thielen is going nuts. Thielen isn't just going nuts because, Thielen is superior talent. Thielen's just getting all the matchups. Thielen's getting the slot guys who the teams they've played have had terrible slot guys. So Thielen is benefiting from all of the greatness that is Diggs taking away on the outside. So Diggs will most likely be defended by, I keep saying guarded like it's NBA, defended by Marshawn Lattimore. Marshawn Lattimore had 1 bad game for the Saints. Week 1, he allowed 124 yards and a touchdown to Mike Evans. Ever since then, he's held everyone to under 70 yards. Odell, Julio, under 70 yards. Those aren't no-name players. Those are the top of the top. Marshon Lattimore is a beast of a corner. He has a blip on his screen of a radar on his mark to begin the year, but that's it. Now, during the playoff game last year, Marshon Lattimore was on Thielen. And you see why Diggs caught the touchdown at the end. Whatever. But I don't think they're going to put Lattimore on Thielen. That was it's a special occasion. Thielen's been the one going nuts. Let's put our best guy on him. I think during the season they just let it go and let Marshon Lattimore guard the guy that's on the outside, which is usually Diggs. Now the next one is everyone's flavor of the week. Everyone's waiting on this guy. Everyone's going nuts. Everyone's like, yes, this is the breakout. This is what I've been waiting for. Pause. No, it's not. Josh Gordon. Josh Gordon had 4 catches for 100 yards last week and an almost touchdown. I don't like when people talk about almost touchdowns. You know how many almost touchdowns everyone gets? Anyone who gets a carry within the one and gets stuffed had an almost touchdown. Now Josh Gordon is going to be, they're playing Buffalo. Now I know you're saying Buffalo, what? Everybody scores against Buffalo. But Buffalo implies the shadow technique. They're the one team that lets their cornerback shadow more than anyone else. So Josh Gordon is going to be going up against Tre'Davious White. I don't know if you know this, but Tre'Davious White is one hell of a cornerback. One hell of a cornerback. So, I don't care what 100 yards he had, almost touchdowns. If I have Josh Gordon, he's sitting on my bench. John Brown, Keenan Allen, Stephon Diggs, Devontae Adams, DeAndre Hopkins, T.Y. Hilton. Tre'Davious White held all of them to under 67 yards. All of them. Those are not little people names. Those are everybody's. That's like 4 number ones. So if I'm you, I implore you, do not start Josh Gordon. Now, I'm not just going to take away your guys and tell you to just be out there without anyone to start. What am I, an animal? Now, the first 2 you're starting. You're starting Hill and Brown. You are. You're not going to sit them. You ain't got the balls. I do. I would sit him. But I'm definitely sitting Diggs. I have Diggs in a bunch of leagues. I have sat him for... I didn't sit him last week, but I sat him the week before when he played Patrick Peterson. Now, the 2 players that come to mind that I know everyone could possibly have on their team, one of whom I've been telling you guys to pick up for a very long time, and I'm telling you, you need to have him in your team, is Geronimo Allison. Geronimo Allison is most likely going to have 70 yards and a touchdown, at least. At least. That's my floor for Geronimo Allison. So I would start him over all of these guys just because I know that's what I'm getting. The other guys, you have to hope they scheme right, broken plays. I don't want to hope. I want to know something. And I think Geronimo Allison is the guy there. Now the next guy most of the people have picked up off waivers because he didn't start on anyone's team is Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd is playing Tampa Bay. I think pretty sure you should start every receiver on Cincinnati against Tampa Bay. The slot wide receiver and the left wide receiver scores the most points ever against Tampa Bay. Because most guys line up on the left and a lot of the more skilled guys tend to go to the slot now. So those guys are averaging like 22 points given up in the slot to the slot guy. So I would start Boyd. If you don't trust me, just watch the games. You'll know. Come back. This has been TFB, the Fantasy Backpack. Listen, learn, hop on. Let's go win a championship together.